Kia ora tātou, ko Andrew Daworeaho. Today we're looking at the Gospel reading for Sunday the 19th of December, just a bare week out, less than a week out from Christmas. So we pick up the narrative at Luke chapter 1 verses 39 through to 45. I'm taking the shorter part. In those days, Mary set out and went with haste to a Judean town in the hill country, where she entered the house of Zechariah and greeted Elizabeth. When Elizabeth heard Mary's greeting, the child leaped in her womb, and Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit and exclaimed with a loud cry, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. And why has this happened to me, that the mother of my Lord comes to me? For as soon as I heard the sound of your greeting, the child in my womb leaped for joy. And blessed is she who believed that there will be a fulfillment of what was spoken to her by the Lord." It's a beautiful story. It really is. And simply taking it at face value, it has a kind of richness and completeness in it, particularly when you consider what comes before. And this is part of our difficulty with the lectionary, because it doesn't tell us. It assumes that we know the story and know it well. This is probably one of the parts we know less well. We know the story of the visit of the angel Gabriel to Mary, of her encounter with him, of the promise that is made, and of her willingness to submit. What happens here, though, is what happens immediately after that. It assumes that we know the full story. She's told that she's going to bear a child. She knows that she's betrothed, she's engaged to be married, but she's not married, and it seems to be to probably a much older man. And the thought is that she's a girl. She may be 16 or so years old. And so she's carrying a lot as she says yes to the commitment that she's about to make. Yes to the request that is made of her. Yes to all that is in front of her, knowing that there will be both joy and pain. There will be both celebration and stigma. Those things will all go together for her. And my hunch is that she has a kind of awareness. There is a maturity in Mary beyond her years. She is well chosen for the task. So she's visited, and she responds in our narrative here, both in faith, but also acknowledging that there's room for doubt. Mary doesn't just take what's happened or what she's had at face value. She doesn't think, oh, that was a dream, or that was a vision, or that was interesting, and then park it. No, she's actually going to check this out to see the veracity of it. She knows that something has happened within her. She also knows that if it's true, it's going to be awkward for her in the next few months as she tries to tell people around her what has happened to her. So she needs to remove herself from the scene. There's a kind of innate sense of knowing within her that where she is now, if she stays, it are probably not safe for her. Certainly not emotionally, psychologically. She needs to be in a place where she can draw breath, where she can draw strength, where she can actually prepare for what's ahead of her without being encumbered by all the critical voices, all the condemnation, all the judgment, all those who will be putting her down and saying that she's a loose young woman. She needs to be free from that. And so there's a sense that she runs. And she runs to the person that she's heard mentioned, Elizabeth. Because Elizabeth, it says, is her cousin, probably more in the age of an auntie, a much, much older, more mature woman who's, we now find, Mary finds, is about to have her first child. According to the message she's been given, Elizabeth is 6 months along in her pregnancy. A woman who was past the age of childbearing, who'd never had children and was no longer expecting one, and yet there's a promise made about this child. And one of the things that's said about him, if we go back to the original narrative where the gift is given to Elizabeth, to Zechariah, is that this child in the womb of Elizabeth will have the Holy Spirit with him before he's born. And we see that being played out in the narrative that we've just read. So Mary wants to check out what has just happened. And the best person to check that out is with Elizabeth. Now, she herself, Mary, is in Nazareth, and so she takes the trip south into the Judean hill country to the village of Elizabeth. We don't know how she travels, we don't know who she goes with, but she goes. And I imagine that there's a certain excitement, but also an anxiety and uncertainty as she travels. Part of her thinks, I could be making a fool's errand. This could be really the dumbest thing I've ever done. But she knows she has to go. What else is she to do? And she knows that when she meets Elizabeth, that either everything will be confirmed or she will be shown to be a little bit unbalanced. And so she goes. And Elizabeth's reaction is immediate, and it affirms the faith of both of them. What pours out of her? Elizabeth doesn't even know that she thinks this. You've had that experience before that. I mean, I have. Times I haven't known what's in my heart until I open my mouth and out it comes. And it's the same here for Elizabeth. The moment that she hears the voice of Mary greeting her, the baby in her also hears it through her, and there's movement in the womb. She describes it as leaps in the womb. And there's a kind of affirmation for both Elizabeth and for Mary as to what is happening. So, this is a safe place for Mary. And as we read on later, she stays with Elizabeth for 3 months. You've got to add 6 and 3 and you get 9. Fairly sure that she was there for the birth of John, who would become John the Baptist. She supported Elizabeth through that time, but it also supported Mary through that time. Mary, by the time she comes to the end of it, will be beginning to show. But she's also had 3 months with someone who believes her, who believes in her, who is on the same journey and is able to strengthen and nurture Mary as she prepares for what happens next. Mary has come to the perfect place to prepare her for all that's ahead of her. Nobody will be able to provide her the encouragement, the wisdom, the insight, the strength that Elizabeth has and can, because they're on a similar kind of faith journey. And so this is really important for Mary. It's an important choice that she's made, and I imagine she has just would be keeping people in touch with what's going on, but she would have initially said, I'm going to support cousin Elizabeth. And it is the best thing she could have done. There's times for all of us when we're facing big challenges that we need to make choices where we're looking for people who can affirm, people who can gently challenge, but people who will walk with us and love us unconditionally. And Mary has found in Elizabeth such a person. This is a place of grace, a place of strength, a place of preparation for her. And so we can celebrate with her as she prepares for the Christ child, as we also prepare yet again to encounter the Christ child this Christmas. God bless you.